to share with you guys how we think about it. So the breakdown of what we're going to do, I'm going to walk through an introduction, as well as Chris from Ākina in New Zealand. He's going to teach you how he thinks about team. I have these worksheets that I'm going to have you guys fill out. Just thinking about like where you are, where your company is, or even thinking as a startup would. We'll each go around and kind of pitch what you've been working on, and then we'll get into small group discussions where you'll listen to each other and give feedback to see if each other is like on the right track. So the goal of this is really to think about how do you think strategically about setting a team, especially in the very, very early stages. So as an early stage investor, this is like one of the most important components, is the team. What the companies are building changes over time and it iterates. But just making sure that you have diverse skill sets and are thinking, as investors, you're thinking like 2 steps ahead about like what is the team that I need to build like for the future, not just right now what I'm trying to solve. So yeah, thinking more of your team as like your most strategic asset. So here is just, you can just read this quote. We did a survey with the Shell Foundation, and found that the best performing CEOs spend more than 50% of their time thinking of this, and companies that aren't doing so well spend less than 10%. And just as you talk to a lot of investors, most prominently is like, I believe in this person and what they're trying to do and their ability to like reach milestones, surpass them, and continue to like go through that process, kind of like winning startup. It's something that's super important at the early stage, which is what I know most. Then here's another quote from Human Capital Crisis. And saying that good talent is something that gets more difficult over time, which you'll see with founders, especially as they get towards like Series A or larger. It's very hard to find like strategic fits for their companies or engineering talent or things like that as they're growing. So like, how can they think about this really early? Do this already, but there is kind of a disconnect. A lot of people think about hiring as just like administrative, like, okay, I need to make sales, or I need to do something, so I'll bring on someone. Or I've worked with this person in the past and they have a similar skill set to me, not realizing that, there's still a lot of gaps that you guys aren't facing, that you're not, I guess, the blind spots that you don't necessarily see if you don't have like diverse talent on your team. And how do you think about it really early? Something else that we find is that a lot of teams will say, okay, well, I want to raise this money, and then once I raise the money, then I'll be able to bring someone on. But as an investor, we're thinking about how are you doing that right now? And as a leader of a company, it's so important for you to be able to have the vision and for people to buy into that vision. So maybe you don't have the money to hire a CTO right now. Are you bringing someone on your advisory board? Like, how are you compensating for what you're doing now? If you don't necessarily have those skills, how are you bringing that on board if people really believe in what you're doing so that you can potentially pay them later to do it when you do raise the money? But investors want to see that you're thinking about it very early. Also, and this is just kind of just well known, it's really important to develop your team internally. Like as you're bringing people into the organizations, figuring out like what their strengths are, how they want to grow, and make sure that you're nurturing that talent. It's also important. What we see with teams is sometimes like the people that started the organization or some of the people that are at the very early phase of the team aren't necessarily who is needed to go to the next level. So it can be harder, but like the CEO or the COOs, it's important that they're constantly evaluating like what are the next milestones and the steps that I need to take, and taking inventory of like who on my team has those capabilities, how can I build them up? Are there people on my team that honestly are no longer serving the team, and getting rid of and getting new team members in if necessary, making those hard decisions. Moral of the story is usually what we see is entrepreneurs aren't necessarily, they underestimate how important it is to think about their team. As an entrepreneur, you can have a lot of tunnel vision on, I just need to build this product, I need to build this product. But like what we try to do through the Village Capital program is make sure that entrepreneurs are thinking about all of the different categories that they're being evaluated on from investors. So your team, your market, even very early thinking about potential exits and things like that. How do you think about those from the ground level to make sure that the way that you're evaluating yourself is also the way that external investors are evaluating you as well? So now, this will come up and share how they think about it at Ākina.
Hello everyone, I'm Chris from Ākina Foundation in New Zealand. My job is General Manager of Programs, but actually that job is all about people. I spend all of my time supporting a program team that deliver accelerators and coaching and training and all those sorts of things out to entrepreneurs. And so for me, the most important thing I can do is talk about culture within that group of people. Who's worked with somebody who's really technically brilliant, but just impossible to get along with? Right? It's an experience that lots of us have had. So I want to talk a little bit, and Ebony's very kindly given me a slot to talk about this, but this is something that when I talk to like new members of our team, I spend like 2-3 hours talking about our culture at Ākina, and it's really special what we have. So what I'm going to do is introduce you to some key concepts that we think about at Ākina, and then if you give me your business card at the end of the session, I'll email out a little bit of a reading pack, some links to some different ideas, so that you can go out and explore and see what feels right for you, because there's a really massive spectrum in this space of really organizations that are quite hierarchical but have incredible cultures, all the way through to really network type organizations that don't. So I'm a real absolute believer that if we have the right people with the right attitude, then everything is possible within our team. So the most important thing for us at Ākina is our values. Our values are very closely grounded to the communities that we work with. So we have 3 values. You're not going to understand 2 of them until I translate them. The first is Ākina, the second is Ako, and the third is bold action. So those first 2 values, the first Ākina is people, the second Ako is about learning, but it's not about a teacher and a student, it's about the relationship between those people. And that's really important for us. And so for us, those values are just a really key touchstone, and they're really unique to us. There's lots of companies out there that have values like honesty, transparency, excellence, but for us, that's the expectation. If you're not all of those things, you can't be doing the job. So we wanted values that were really, really unique to us, and they are our guiding light underneath our purpose. We check everything we do against those. But they're actually, values are quite hard to use on a day-to-day basis. So we also use a whole lot of principles. And again, there's maybe more of these, 10 of them. Most of them are in Māori, so I'm not going to list them out to you. But those principles are really, they're how do we execute, how do we make decisions within the organization. But they're not about how we relate to each other. They're more kind of what is the work. We use, so maybe a couple of examples to help you understand that. So some examples of some principles might be things like community-led, or fail fast, or if you were building bridges, accurate and dependable. You've got to choose ones that are right for you. And the final thing we use within Ākina is a bunch of things we call protocols. Has anybody come across a group, a philosophy called the core protocols? So it was a husband and wife team, McCarthy, husband and wife. They spent a lot of time looking at what makes teams work. And organizations like Google have done a lot of space, work in this space too. And they just kind of distilled it down to these 10 protocols. We only use 2 or 3 of them because we're an absolute believer that context is everything. And for us, some of those protocols weren't right. But I wanted to give you an example of one protocol we use. It's called check-in. So it's a bit more complicated than the standard check-in, check-out that you sometimes use in kind of lean startup or agile methodologies. Check-in for us, we have 4 words you can use: mad, sad, glad, and afraid. And so those help sum up for us who we are, what's going on in our lives. So I might turn up to a meeting and say, look, I'm kind of mad, I got a really crap sleep last night, but I'm really glad that I got to hug my daughter this morning, because sometimes I don't always get to do that. And what that does is it connects us as people. So we have a whole load of these protocols, and I'll share some of them with you in the reading. But for us, those protocols are how do we bring our full selves? How do we bring vulnerability? How do we bring connection between people? As I said, there are a whole lot of toolkits, and I'll send some stuff out to you around different kind of organizational models, different practices for you to explore and kind of find what's right for you, because what's right for us, as has been kind of echoed earlier today, what's right for us is not right for you, but hopefully it could be some inspiration.
Thank you, Paris.
And I feel like you just really brought to light, like, once you have the team, like, how do you keep them inspired, and like, what do you do on the day-to-day? And so, kind of leads me into our activity, and I will pass this around. But this is basically for you guys to start thinking about, like, what are the things that, the next few milestones that you need to reach with your teams? What are the skills? What are the skills associated with each of them? What do you have internally versus what you need to look for externally? And then actually thinking about, like, who are these people?
Sorry, clarification. Are you talking about people's program teams right now with their accelerators, or are you talking about like startups?
So usually we do this with startups.
Yeah, that's good.
But I know you can do this just with your teams today, but this is what we'll walk through usually with startups. But I think what's great about like accelerators and incubators, as you guys already know, is like it's almost like executive leadership. It allows you to take a step back and just take inventory about like where you are and like where you need to go. So I think it's still a valuable exercise. If you want to, instead of thinking about yourself, think about one of your favorite companies that you've supported and mapping this out to them. You can do it that way as well. So I'm going to pass around also this to the different tables. Everyone might not be able to have one for this. But this is the viral pathway. It's probably like what Village Capital is most famous for. Well, no, we're most famous for our peer selection.
You're famous for this too.
That's true.
Viral's a big deal.
But viral is starting to be like a new thing that we're famous for, and we're actually like turning into a tool. And it's just to help startups to think about as they're growing. As you're growing, what are the 8 different categories that you should be thinking about yourself as a startup? And also, what are the 9 different levels? So if you look at the right side, you can see it's kind of like funding. And on the left side, it's just showing you like what are the different levels. And so what we usually do is we will have startups take this at the beginning of our program, and for each of these columns to evaluate where they are. And what you'll see that startups are never usually like on one level across the board. They may be on like a 4 or 5 in team, and then you get down the scale and they're only on a 2. And it's really just a self-assessment for you to see like what are some of the areas that I haven't been paying as much attention, and how can I level up. So as you think through this, you can correlate it with this, or if you want, you can just think about like what are the next things I need to do, or the startup that I have in mind, what they need to hit to get to the next level. So if that is they're trying to establish product market fit, or I need to hire a CTO, or I need to, I don't know, there's tons of things on here. So if you guys can just take 5 minutes and start to fill out some things in this first column here. Okay guys, we're going to move to the next column. I see people have already started moving ahead, but it's just, after you think about like what are the next things that you need to get to the next level, the next column is thinking like what are the skills that you need to complete these things. So I'm sure a lot of people can identify with this programming stuff. Inside accelerators, I know I do. We were thinking about, or something that we needed. A lot of people within our organizations have kind of like grown up through programs, like even for myself. I started like as an associate and went to senior manager, now I'm director all over our US stuff. But we really needed to bring in like an outside person that had experience with sales, because all of our programs are based on like fundraising. We didn't have that fundraising experience. So within the last 2 weeks, we have brought someone on to handle that. But for us, like to get to the next level and to kind of better operationalize the processes of how we get money instead of just kind of one-off annoying someone until they give us some money, was something that we needed to do internally as we're growing up as an organization. So that's just an example. But yes, take 5 more minutes to move to the second column and continue to figure out, now that you know what goals you're trying to achieve to get to the next level, what are the skills that you need? What do you need externally? When will you need these skills? Is this something you need right now? Is this something you need a year from now as you're thinking about future cohorts? And then you guys don't have your computers, but something you might want to do after this is like get on LinkedIn or just think about people who actually could fill those roles. Like who aspirationally would you want to bring in your organization to do these things? How can you start to network with them now? Maybe you're inviting them into your cohorts as mentors and things like that, so they can have exposure to what you do, and then you try to coach them later. I don't know. But thinking about like, what are the next things? You've got the skill. You have the problems. What are the skills you need now? Think about like who internally and externally can actually do these things. I also say it's good to have your entrepreneurs take surveys after the program to see which mentors they really liked.
Yeah.
Were there any that were like offensive, terrible, so you know?
Exactly, and adjust all the time.
Yeah. And like for us, mentors like coming to our programs because they're sector specific. So it's almost like a conference. They're coming to meet entrepreneurs, but they're also coming to meet other industry experts in the space that they don't necessarily have access to. Like one of our main value propositions is that like we are like a convener of people across philanthropy, investors, corporations, and bringing all those people in certain sectors in a room together. It's valuable for them as well.
Yeah. Maybe we can actually take some questions of some of the challenges that maybe some people have in hiring, so that way we can answer some questions.
Can you describe what are the skills in your team, like which position? You mentioned already like some big department, but can you tell us like how many people are in your team and what these people are actually doing? Because I think it's sometimes for us, it's like we don't know that if we should really make a new job for this position or like really essential.
So we have a pretty similar structure to what you were describing. Like for each of our programs, we have an associate. They do a lot of the communications with the entrepreneurs throughout the program. We then have a practice lead that has like the sector expertise in whatever sector that is. We have our logistics person that works across all programs. I think one role that we have that I didn't hear mentioned is we have an investment analyst that's dedicated to a particular program. They really help the entrepreneurs to build out their financial models throughout the programs. At the end of the program, they put together a briefing book for our third workshop that's handed to each of the investors so they can get like a snapshot of each of the companies. And it's actually one of the biggest value adds of our program, especially since we're working with such early companies that are just figuring out all that financial stuff. So yeah, that's usually for a program. Those are like the 3 to 4 roles that we have.
We have a lot of generalists within our organisation, so we've got about 30 people within the team, and I would say probably 2/3 of that, the delivery team, either doing international investment or capability development. The way we structure our teams is kind of interesting. So we're a super non-hierarchical organisation, and we have a very specific model we use for our teams, which is we have team leads. And those team leads are jointly responsible for the delivery of the project. So we don't tend to have like a senior delivery person or a program director. We have a program team, and people have specific roles within that. So somebody might be curriculum design, somebody might be mentor management. But then we've also got 2 other roles we use, who are called contributors and advisors. So what we tend to do is our team leads tend to be internal Ākina staff, because we need people to understand our culture, our programs, our processes. But our contributors and our advisors are often external to the team, or we bring in contractors or experts to do that work. So for us, a contributor, they're responsible for just doing one thing within the project. So it might be, design workshop number 4, because you're an expert on social procurement. We're going to give you that job, so you don't need to worry about the rest of the program. And then an advisor, which is my favourite role and the role I play in a lot of programs, is you get to give advice, but you don't have to do anything. So like you can give your advice, but it's ultimately the program's team to decide what they do. So they can ask me my advice, they don't have to take it. So that's how we structure our teams, and that gives us a really flexible model to bring in external people or reform internal teams. But these people tend to be generalists as well. The other thing I'll quickly share about our team structure, I was explaining this to help me before, we recruit T-shaped skill sets. So we recruit people who have like really great generalist skills, but then they're really deep at something. So it might be that they're really good at impact, or they're really good at procurement, or something like that. And then over time, we try and build out all the different parts of the organisation. So eventually, we have a really good match. But we don't expect we do expect everybody to be able to kind of tag into some kind of conversation about marketing or sales, things like that.
I would say for the people that you're hiring that are working with the cohorts or on the program, whoever it is, they need to be scrappy and willing to like roll up their sleeves. Because when you're running events or workshops or things like that, like, it's important that you have people that are, just really focused on helping the entrepreneur at all costs and figuring out what that looks like. You should build it into your budgets of to have a bigger team. You're just gonna burn your team out. And so it's fine at the early stages, but as you're thinking about where you wanna be in 12 months, because we used to, our prices, we were charging based on our team of 5, whereas now, we just bake in, okay, it takes 3 or 4 people to run this program, so we need to up the budget. We're maybe a team of 4 now, but for us to be able to, most effectively deliver the service to whoever, this is what it's realistically going to take so I can bring on the right people on the team. I would say, as you're forward looking. Thank you guys all for sharing so much about your experiences in different parts of the world or running these kind of programs. I think it's just figuring out, for the program that you're trying to run, what are the skill sets that you need? Sounds like a lot of them are pretty similar with the program management, someone to help with financials, someone's going to help with partnerships, someone's going to roll up their sleeves and really get things done on the ground. I'm sure a lot of you are working in all those roles yourself. What are things what can you be most valuable at, and what are things that you can kind of deprioritize and bring someone on board that can take certain things off your plate? Also wanted to share with you guys, we have a resource that was created by someone on our Africa team, talent.buildcap.com/playbook. There are 9 different modules that are just talking about building out teams. So it's very valuable, and I suggest you go and check it out.